It's a little windy today, but the wind will die down in a few seconds. We're going to be heading down the trails through the north end of the West Humber River. They start just up ahead here. We'll be going through the park just off of Dufferin Street here. Or at least elements of it. But first we're going to go a little bit north. Now the segment of the trail that we're going to go down is up here on our right. But it continues north over there on the left, up and further into Vaughan. It goes fairly far into Vaughan. It's the Bartley Smith Greenway. But we're gonna deke down through here and head towards Bathurst. Now in theory this stretch is fully paved, but as you can see up ahead, the catch here is that all this land is floodland. The creek that goes through here off to the side kind of winds its way through here, and there's lots of spots where it loops back on itself and creates natural flood zones. So you can see, even though at a glance it looks like I'm walking on a dirt trail here, the dirt's actually been washed in here by rainstorms and overflows from the creek. Because there's actually a low point over here. So the water naturally wants to run that way, and it's taking the dirt off the sides and covering up the cement. Similarly, because you got the hill here, water wants to come down the hill and lift this dirt up and carry it across. A lot of the sewers actually run through these ravines. Largely, I suspect, because in the old days, we would just terminate them at the creek. whether they were sewers or storm sewers. We just dumped them into the Don here. Because it's going to carry it all away, right? So once we realized that turning these rivers into cesspools generally wasn't in our best interest, what they did was they connected all those pipes that were pushed into the valleys to sewers that would take the water and polluted water elsewhere. And that's actually the main reason we won't be able to do likely the typical route into the park that we're heading to. And it's because they're actually on the Toronto side of Steeles, completely rebuilding that piping system. So the trail that we would normally be able to take that would take us into the sort of north middle of the park is blocked off. So we're going to take one of the alternate routes. So this is normally the back door from Steeles into G. Ross Lord Reservoir Park. On the weekends, you can probably go through here if it's open. But today I've kind of got an early long weekend. And they're probably working back there today. So we're not going to try and go through there. We're going to take the easternmost entrance into this park. And it'll force a double back later, but it's a nice cool day today, so I'm not having any problems with the battery. Now this is actually a redo of this, because I tried to do it last weekend and the route that I took on the south end of this kind of missed some things that I wanted to show, but also, even though it's drawn in Apple Maps and Google Maps as a viable route, it's not actually viable anymore. You can still get through to where I wanted to finish up, but it's basically a very rough, grown-in version of the trail now. So it's not a route I'd recommend anybody try and do. So for the south half, we're gonna try and go through a route that looks like it's a lot more clean. We're also gonna make sure that we hit the reservoir. But we're still going to end up at the same place. Now, just off the trails back here, or just off the streets back here, is going to be the east end entrance to this park. You can also go over to Dufferin Street and just head straight down Dufferin Street until you see the G. Ross Park entrance. Over here is a massive Santa Hill pasture plant. The buildings are kind of interesting because they're all hard brick. And so on the weekends when there's people in the park camping out and playing music, it echoes off those buildings back down into the trail below. Now, you can head down here, and I believe there's a park off this street where you can come into the trail that we're going to a little bit earlier. We're going to try and come in up here off Fisherville Street. think what I'm looking for is up ahead here. Yep, it's going to run parallel to this creek. We got a squirrel checking us out over here. See how much space he's willing to give us. Sorry, I got no nuts for you. It's last weekend of August. So everything's still mostly green, although if you look around every now and then, you'll see a leaf or two that's starting to change. I get the feeling from the way some of those squirrels will just stand there with their paws out. There are a few people that just come through here and feed them. They're kind of hesitant to just run away. It's like, are you going to slip me a nut? Now to continue south, we're going to go this way. But what I want to do is head down into the north side of this park. Because what happens is all of these creeks And tributaries feed into the north end of the West Don. And so what happens is they kind of cut the park in half, with the reservoir being on the south side of a lake in the Don proper, and the park itself being on the north side of that lake / reservoir. So I want to kind of kick up and into the park, and then we'll loop back down through here and go south. Testing? Okay. On the way out, we might just go up through here. That might not take us to where we want to go. And maybe I got myself spinned around. Maybe that other exit's the early exit. Yeah, I think that's the early exit. Because this here is the entrance to, or at least the signage for G. Ross Lord Park. So we won't be going back that way. We'll actually be coming back to here and then heading down that street. Basically down in that ravine. It's where all the little tributaries and creeks run. Everybody's out trying to either put on winter fat or store things away. Might be a little early for them to start putting on fat. Simply because it's the end of August. And winter doesn't really spin up in Toronto until after December these days.
So if you don't mind me saying.
Yeah, no, and no. This is kind of the point where the rivers start coming together from the north side, all the little tributaries and stuff. Start heading south. Much like a lot of our ravines, it would not shock me to find out that this used to be a street. And we'll talk a little bit more about why I say that when we start working our way through the south side. No. So this here is the south end of that central trail we didn't go down. It's all brand new because up to a bridge up there, and if you look down in here, let's see if we can see it when we come around the corner. So straight back in there is the south end of the replacement sewer that they're putting in. So they completed this whole section and now they're doing the north half. It's still actually pretty easy to go through the north half. They haven't really chopped any sections up in such a way that you still can't get through there. It's just that I wouldn't recommend doing it on a weekday while they're actually doing the work, because it's all heavy machinery moving around. and not a lot of space for you to deal with if that heavy machinery starts heading in your general direction. I suspect they're going to get very upset with you for being in their way. So this is G. Ross Lord Park proper. It's one of Toronto's buried reservoirs. The reason why this is so relatively flat and wide is because underneath it is water storage. And at a lot of those locations in Toronto, they've turned them into soccer fields or sports arenas on top. Mostly because they have to keep the trees off the underground tanks. So if they're gonna cut the grass anyways, they might as well do something with it. I don't know how easy it is to get to, but in the back over here, we're gonna see if we can get over there. See if anybody's out riding today. There's a riding stable for children with various disabilities over in here. But we'll loop. Even though the trail videos don't usually get as many views as the street videos do, I still like to shoot them. If only because people like to say there's no place to enjoy nature in Toronto. And I'm kind of like, well, look around, right? Lots of lovely little parks. Here, we're just going to cut through this field. But if I understand correctly, underneath our feet here is thousands of gallons of water. All stored and ready for distribution if necessary. Steels is pretty much so as high as you can get in Toronto. So feeding it from here downhill, you let gravity do all the work of maintaining pressure. Even if you have to expend energy to get the water here. The amount of energy you'd have to expend to get the equivalent pressure of just having the water at this high point is a lot greater than bringing the water here to begin with. Especially when you have aquifers and water sources around here that you can actually purify and draw from. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so we can't go down and see the horses because it's private territory, which is understandable. There's two things that you kind of don't want to place too much stress on. But I think that's the last horse stable within Toronto proper. I might have to go see if they reestablished the horse stable at Sunnybrook Park. There was actually a big stable there, and you could do trail riding. But I don't know if COVID finished it off, because the last time I went through there post-COVID, it was basically abandoned. Or if someone has, or if it had been closed for a while, or if someone now, with people getting more comfortable being outside again, has reopened it. But the one bad thing about Toronto parks is we've got all these big facilities that were built in the 50s and 60s, and they're just being allowed to die because no one wants to fund them. It's seen as an unnecessary expense. And instead, they just focus on field maintenance. Sunnybrook Park in particular has a lot of really beautiful buildings that have just been left to die, from what I can tell. So we're gonna go back up to the street those big buildings are on, and then we're gonna do the south half of this course. So yeah, if you go up this way, it looks like, based on the sign back there, it'll also take you to the trail that I mentioned came a little bit further down past the street that we took a left on to take this trail over here, over that way. because the park where that's listed on the street further south is Hidden Trail Park, and the sign back there said that the path would take you to Hidden Trail Park. So if you actually go up there, there's a point where the river that runs in here actually meets another path, or actually kind of bends to come down through that side. And there's a bridge that crosses it, so you can go north through the section that's under construction, but you can also keep going on this side of the river, and that more than likely takes you up to Hidden Trail Park, for which the trail is not quite hidden anymore. I don't know how well it's going to come up on this camera, but you can see the dead branches up there. And on some of them you can see, I think this tree right here, you can see where the city has chopped the dead branches off. The river is running a little bit faster than usual because there was a pretty good rainstorm all day yesterday. So all that water's got to clear the system. Kind of wonder if these are ash trees. We've got a problem with ash borer beetles. Snuck into some packages from outside of Canada and came over here and found all sorts of ash trees, nice and tasty. So they've been eating through the ash trees in Toronto. And all around Toronto they've been cleaning up dead trees and trying to kill the ash borers. Hey, little buddy. This is kind of interesting because this funeral house is kind of in the middle of the hydro corridor. And towards behind it, there's a small graveyard. But you kind of have to come in a service road that runs this full length. To get to it. So if you look all the way over there, that's all graves running parallel to the hydro corridor here. And you kind of get the feeling that it's just all been wedged into a space that we can't really do much else with. We don't like to build things near the hydro corridor out of concerns for the electromagnetic fields generated by these high voltage lines. So the houses on the other side there are about as close as they'll let things get. But in North York, at least, they've repurposed all this space as soccer fields and other sport fields. There's quite a few spots in Toronto where these are just nothing more than empty land. But I mean, using this for soccer fields makes a lot of sense. It's all got to be flat, and it's generally kept clean, because they don't want trees growing under the hydro lines. And if someone's going to cut this out periodically anyways, you may as well do something with it. This sign here is where I screwed up last time. I listened to the sign that says the trail continues that way in 500 meters. It does not. We're gonna go this way. But all that building that you see over there isn't housing. It's some sort of mausoleum. Because if you look at the aerial maps of this, all through there is graveyards. And generally speaking, people do not like to live inside a graveyard. But up ahead, what we're going to come across is the reservoir that gives the park its name. The G. Ross Lord Reservoir. It is one of the few large dams in Ontario that does not generate electricity. The sole purpose of this reservoir is to mitigate a 100-year storm. It was built after Hurricane Hazel rolled through to capture as much rainfall as possible on the north end of the Don, and then release it when things calm down. So when we get over here, we can actually walk across the top of it. And if you saw my Dufferin Street North video, you'll have noticed that it was mostly empty. And that's pretty much the case, except for in the spring. Or after a really heavy rainstorm. because the sole purpose of this dam isn't to store water per se. You know, there's a lot of reservoirs, especially when you think of reservoirs in US states, where the purpose of the reservoir is to actually store and redirect water on a constant basis. Whereas in this case, this reservoir is intended to store water short term and release it safely when it's safe to do so. And in so doing, what it does is it reduces the risk of flooding downstream along the Don. So when we walk along the path here, we'll look into the reservoir itself, and you'll kind of see that the water level is very low, and a lot of the land actually within the reservoir has grown in because we haven't had a major storm come through here on the scale of Hurricane Hazel in a long time. But the amount of water that can actually be held in here is not insignificant. And you'll see that once we get over there. Over here is the back end of that graveyard. All of this is designed to be filled. Pretty much so all the way up to the top here. But it's important to note that it's not really a measure of how much or how little water we're getting anymore, because this is not intended to be full all the time. This reservoir is intended to be kept at a relatively low state to maintain weight on the surface of the reservoir itself, so that the land doesn't settle or break or start to flow, crack, and allow water to get underneath this dam. But if we do get torrential downpour on the scale of a hurricane, if you were to come out here, assuming they'd even let you up here on the days after that hurricane, this reservoir would be full. Because what we're trying to do is capture all the water coming down from the north and hold it here so that along the Don to the south, we don't flood out all the houses that are along the Don as it goes south through Toronto. Because that's what happened when Hurricane Hazel hit. There was no control along the Don other than those navigational maintenance barriers that you see on some of the paths that I walk through, that are really intended to just keep the water at a certain level throughout the length of the Don. This here is the primary inflow and then outflow over there. And this is likely the controls for that, or a way for them to go down and service the gates. But over here, this is the master spillway. Out here. So when the water is actually at capacity, when they want to start draining this dam, they won't use the lower spillway per se. They'll start to open up this spillway until the water's back to a lower level, and then they will drain from the side spillway. And you can kind of tell that this isn't open very often. Someone needs to get down in there and clean it. That's why they got the boys over there as well. So that's the big spillway. If we need to dump, that's where the water is going to come out. Let me get a better view over here. Yeah. And because the area through there doesn't really have people in it, they haven't done enough, or well, not enough, I should say. They haven't done anything really down in this valley to contain the water within the Don itself. Whereas if you go watch the video of the West Don River that I shot from Bathurst through to Yonge Street, you can see how the reaction through the areas where we actually do have houses and roads was to basically set the Don up to move water. They basically dug it out, put in cement channels, and forced it through those channels to try and move as much water as possible, as quickly as possible. So now what we want to do is get across Finch, because the stretch of the trail that will actually get us through to Bathurst, where the other video would start, is back here. There's a couple options to do that. We're going to see which one is actually still viable. If the first one works, good. But if we have to, we'll double back and try the second. Now, if you look at Apple or Google Maps, they might tell you that further down Steeles, you can walk a trail along the east or north side of the Don River, depending on how you want to look at it. Do not follow those instructions. That trail is extremely out of use. There are parts of it that are in good condition. But it's basically the first 200 or so meters of that trail. And then it's just the remnants of a bush trail. There's nothing useful or friendly about it. So we're going to try the west/south side trails alongside the Don. Both of which terminate at the Jewish Center on Bathurst, where the Bathurst section of this video starts. So we're going to see which one of those trails will actually take us to the bridge that crosses over the Don behind the Holocaust Center safely now, without you needing to bring your own weed whacker to find your way through. Now, one option is behind what appears to be either a public or a private learning center. So we might not be able to get to it. But we'll try that one first, and if it doesn't work, it's a short hop to where we need to go to take a different route. Similarly, if we start heading down that path, and from satellite imagery, it looks like that path is actually in decent shape, at least to start. But if it starts to turn into the sort of trail that the north side was, we're gonna turn around and go back. And we'll go check out the other crossing. Because the other crossing shows up nice and clean through the satellite image as well, all the way through. Whereas the crossing we're gonna try first disappears into the bush, and I can't really see how it goes once it heads south. Just hoping to see if we could grab the hawk up there, but the camera doesn't seem to want to pick it up. Which is a bit weird because it's kind of high contrast against the clouds. But this is basically 60s Toronto suburbia. There's some newer houses like this one here, but most of the houses here are that sort of 60s, 70s bungalow. You have this modern edifice right next to this, which, to be honest, I think this one actually has more style. I like this a lot more than I like that new one. Same over here. These houses have more sort of panache to them. Okay. Now at the end of this street, there's supposed to be some way to get into the learning center. I'm wondering if it's up here on the left. And if I don't see it, well then I'll just keep heading down this street until we get to the alternative. Also, if there's a sign up that's like it's a private learning center, I'm not going to go in there. We'll just go to the other route. Yeah, they're closed off. So I could probably still walk through here, but I don't think we'll bother. This used to be run by the Toronto District School Board. I get the feeling they've just shut it down. But if we head south, we'll hit the clear path that's still in use. But to be honest, even though I could probably just step over that barrier, if they have, for all intents and purposes, shut that facility down, the reason I don't want to go through there is because it's highly likely that the old trail is not being maintained anymore as well. and we'll head down and we'll go through all the trouble of going through there, and we'll just end up having to turn around and come back. So we're gonna keep going this way down to Delbank Road. These here are all new subdivisions. They're 80s, 90s subs. I'm just not sure if someone actually bought up a neighborhood and rebuilt it or what. But these are not 70s homes. They're fairly modern. Yeah, this is where we're gonna cut across. Brand new transformer station. And we're gonna cut through here, I think. I know it says no trespassing, and I think it's because this is new. But this trail's been here for a while. Long enough that the Holocaust Center across the river has actually built a bridge specifically to allow people to access it. So I kind of wonder how new all this is. That said, as you can tell, this is not an official city trail. It's not remotely paved. It's rare to see pure dirt trails in Toronto. Most of the official ones are paved now. A little bit torn on which I prefer. When the paved ones are newish, they're nice because they're smooth and you got great traction. But when they grow out, but when they have a few years worth of snow and frost heave on them, they tend to be awful. Like worse than some of the streets in Toronto. Up ahead, we should be able to get a feel for just how well maintained that other trail we were going to go on is, because it's supposed to join up with this trail up ahead. So if we look off to our left and we see something that looks like an Indiana Jones movie, we'll know that the trail is not actually being maintained anymore. And it might be just up here. opposite. Yeah, this might be where the trail comes in. If not, we'll see up ahead if there's somewhere else. Because the fun thing about trails is that humans like to make their own. And so do animals. So sometimes you'll come to a spot where it looks like, oh, this is a really well-used trail. And you'll very rapidly realize that no, it is not. Yeah. So yeah, that entrance back there was the exit of that other trail. So I don't think that other trail is maintained all the way south anymore. Over to our right, or sorry, I guess left, is a little spillway dam. Just another flood control measure. Keep the water at a certain level upstream. Let it back up a little bit upstream. Control the rate at which it flows downstream. There's a bunch of those all the way along the Don and the Humber. Sort of speed bumps. Yeah, we don't have to worry about being prosecuted. Generally speaking, as long as you don't be a jerk to the Jewish community across the river here, they're not going to charge you with anything. So up there is the spillway, and that controls the flow of the water down here. And then the Don kind of flows around here. You got the M&M Trail. And this is basically a Jewish community center. Off to our left is the Holocaust Museum. And then they've got a bunch of other buildings back there for other activities. I could have sworn it was called the Miles Nadell Jewish Community Center, but it looks like after their deaths, someone made a big donation, and now it's the Honey and Berry Sherman Community Center. But the Don basically flows all along here, underneath a bridge over there, and then underneath Bathurst Street into the section that we filmed before. Across the bridge goes down into a little valley beside the river, and they do bunch of different events back there. It's kind of a space, I think, where they can bring some horses in and run the horses around as well. And this is kind of where the north end of those Don Trails ends. And over there is where the other video kind of starts, although we did do a little bit of a walk around the Jewish Center then too. But we're gonna just go up here for a couple seconds and peek down into the valley. And that's all of that. See if we can get another view over here. And from here, it's just a short walk down to Bathurst Street, or you can take the trail back over there and head down the rest of the Don.